What's happening? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening, man? It's gonna go. David, bro. David got a lot of stuff going on, got a lot of explaining to do. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna get into it. Let the stuff go on. This man is not arrested yet, but
we are following major breaking news tonight. Singer.
let me get the other one first. Where to start at? Let's get to the start.
New footage has just circulated of possibly David and Celeste Rivas Hernandez, the girl whose body was found in his car. If true, what does this tell us? Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. We have another layer to this David Celeste Rivas Hernandez case that we want to talk about. Apparently, potentially video of them together. Now, why does this matter? Well, considering the body of 14-year-old Celeste was found in the trunk of a Tesla registered to singer David Anthony Burke, back in September, and understanding the relationship, that becomes key. Now, there's been online speculation about the two of them. TMZ has reported that those in the romantic homicide singer's inner circle believed she was 19 years old, that they were hanging out. He's 20, by the way. The New York Post reporting that in a 2023 song, David raps, "Oh, Celeste, the girl with my name tattooed on her chest, smell her on my clothes like cigarettes." And speaking of tattoos, it was reported that Celeste and David each have these matching tattoos on their fingers. That actually seems to be how her decomposed remains were ID'd. Now, there were reports that she is a runaway, speculation that she was trying to see David. And despite all of this, there is no established connection or association or relationship that has been confirmed by authorities investigating Celeste's death. In fact, there is no confirmed suspect or person of interest, even a cause of death for Celeste. But what has just come out? What are we talking about? This 30
Tonight, singer David has been arrested in connection to the murder of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas, according to the LAPD. This is a case that stretches back more than 2 years to when she was last seen alive. Her decomposed body found in the trunk of David's Tesla late last year. We're on the case presented by Law and Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. All right, let's get to this breaking news coming in right now from Los Angeles. A bombshell announcement by the LAPD. I want you to take a look right here. This is the post that was put out by the public information officer with the Los Angeles Police Department on social media, announcing the singer, known as David, had been arrested by homicide detectives in LA, quote, for the murder of Celeste Rivas. Now, David, his real name is David Burke. He is now being held without bond, and he hasn't been charged as of yet. The LAPD says that his case will be presented to the DA on Monday for filing consideration. We're going to go over the process here in just a moment. This is a case that has taken months to get to this point. I know so many of you have been following this, and now it seems like the next step, a major step, is still something that's going to take some time before we learn a lot of information about this case. And we'll be talking to former federal prosecutor Nima Rahmani about that here in just a moment. But as we focus now on this announcement, it may feel like a long time coming because David was announced as a suspect in November of 2025. Now, before we get into what will happen next, I do want to get you up to speed on this case because it is one that has been going on in some ways months, in other ways years. According to the LAPD, this all started in September of 2025, and that is when officers responded to an impounded lot in Hollywood after there were reports of a foul odor coming from a vehicle, a Tesla. Now, that vehicle, it had been towed days earlier after it was found on a street, abandoned, it seemed, in Los Angeles. Now, police say that vehicle, that Tesla, it was registered to David Burke. And many people in the music community know him by just one name, David, D4vd. Now, when detectives searched that car, they found a body, and that body was later identified as a 14-year-old girl, her name, Celeste Rivas Hernandez. Her body was in the front storage area of the Tesla. That's like the trunk of the vehicle. And it was in a state of decomposition, law enforcement said. Investigators have said that Celeste may have been dead for weeks before she was discovered. The teen's mom told investigators that she was last seen and heard from in April of 2024. So here we are in April of 2026 with David now under arrest in connection to her murder. The last time she was seen alive, according to her mom, all the way back roughly 2 years ago. Her mom also added another point about her daughter, and it was that she had a boyfriend named David. Now, by late 2025, sources were telling ABC News that David was being considered a suspect in the case, but no charges had been filed. Yet behind the scenes, a grand jury had been hearing evidence in the case, including Burke's reported travel to the Santa Barbara area of California during the spring of 2025 and a search of the Hollywood Hills property where he was reportedly staying and reports of a high heat burn cage found at that location. Then we go to January of this year, 2026. David's alleged close friend, a man named Neo Langston, was arrested in Montana for failing to appear as a witness in a Los Angeles grand jury investigation. And a week after that, Langston was spotted entering a Los Angeles courthouse and reportedly testified before the grand jury. But since then, for the most part, frankly, crickets in this case. No real developments, of course, until now. Joining us now to talk about this breaking news, former federal prosecutor Nima Rahmani, president of West Coast Trial Lawyers. Always great to have you on Law and Crime. Big story out of Los Angeles tonight. Just what's your reaction? Because we have been covering this for so long about David's arrest.
Chris, my reaction is better late than never. I think this was something that we've all been expecting. When a body is found decomposing in the frunk of your Tesla, and there has been a young girl who's been missing for quite some time, and there's plenty of evidence that she ran away with you or a member of your entourage. I think there was a lot of evidence here pointing to David, and really the question was, what really took so long? And I think my initial reaction is, I live and work in LA. I respect law enforcement. Things can move slowly here. But I think this investigative grand jury, I think, really is the answer. I think the DA wanted to lock in some members of David's inner circle to make sure that they cooperate, they don't go sideways at trial. And I think that's what they were waiting on before they ended up arresting.
So the announcement that came from the LAPD's TIO account says he's been arrested in connection to the murder of Celeste Rivas. And then it says that he's being held without bond. And then the case is going to be reviewed by the DA's office on Monday, or it goes in front of the DA's office on Monday. Like, if you can just walk us through the process of how that works, as opposed to them saying tonight, he has been charged with this and he's going to make his first appearance tomorrow.
Well, typically when you're talking about the DA, it's a reactive case. It's not like this. Law enforcement, they arrest someone, They prepare a report. That file lands on the DA's desk, and there's a charging DA that makes a decision. It's a little bit different in this case because it's more of a proactive investigation. Obviously, Celeste Rivas has been missing for quite some time and has been dead for also quite some time. So you have this case that has been worked on for more than 6 months now. I mean, I think, if I recall correctly, Celeste's body was found in September. I mean, we all saw the video of the car being impounded and that search. Then, of course, law enforcement executed search warrants at David's home. Again, months and months ago. So this is the type of case that isn't just a file that lands on some DA's desk. This is a case that is being directed by prosecutors at the district attorney's office. They convene this investigative grand jury, and we know that a grand jury has two functions. In most states and at the federal level, their function is to indict, but it also has an investigative function. They have subpoena power, so they can subpoena people, witnesses, they can subpoena information and documents, and that's what the grand jury was doing in this case. So it seems to me that the prosecution has this all buttoned up right now. This isn't the type of case they're reacting to. This is a case where they think we not only have enough probable cause to get that arrest warrant and get past a preliminary hearing, but we have enough to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt to a jury at trial.
Do you think that this came as a surprise to David tonight, this arrest?
I think given how long it's taken, maybe folks had forgotten about it, but obviously there's been a lot of attention on this case, and frankly, a lot of negative media attention. Again, I sit here in LA, and a lot of folks are asking, what is LAPD doing? How could a young girl be missing for so long? How could her teacher give an interview saying that she ran off with someone named David? How could her body be found in the trunk of a vehicle? I mean, even if it was an accident, that in and of itself is potentially a crime. So why haven't any arrests been made? And I think really now we're going to know the answer very soon. I think the information is going to come out. We're going to have a lot more of the evidence, whether it's witness testimony, cooperators, whether it's electronic evidence, cell phones, social media. There's a lot of people watching. Social media sleuths, detectives, they've followed that digital footprint, right? And they've seen, pictures, images on social media of the two seemingly together. And I think all those are sort of bricks in the wall that are going to eventually be the reason that David is convicted in this case.
And beyond that too, I mean, I think when you think about the LAPD, like celebrities, it's not a big deal for them in the way that it might be for other police departments across the country. When you look at the timeline, the case certainly has these elements that we followed the developments along the way, but how much did the celebrity of David add to the timeline it took for him to be arrested in connection to this? And we'll see what they specifically accuse him of.
Well, it's interesting. The celebrity factor, people think it helps. I don't necessarily think it helps being a celebrity in LA. In fact, it draws more attention to it. I mean, obviously, look, the case I kind of give the example of recently, she was just sentenced, Matthew Perry, right? He was involved in a drug-related death. He was a victim. But the fact that, the ketamine queen, Jasmine Song, killing Matthew Perry, and again, I'm not naive, that case was treated differently than the 2019 case when she killed someone with ketamine. So, the celebrity factor draws attention to it. The reality is we're talking about the case here on Law and Crime because it's David. And, there are many young girls that go missing, and I'm not talking about it. I'm not asked to speak about it. And it doesn't make it any different. It doesn't make it any less right. There's women that are trafficked, they're sexually abused, they're victims of violence, they're even murdered, hundreds, thousands every single day. So I think the celebrity factor probably ended up drawing more attention to it, both law enforcement and prosecution attention to the case because of who David is.
Right. And even when you think of LA, I mean, we've talked about Nick Reiner recently, very different circumstances in that case. But I mean, just the amount of attention, the amount of cameras, at court when he makes an appearance. It's just different than other families that have dealt with issues like that. When you look at this case going forward, I remember Neil Langston, one of David's friends, he gets arrested for not cooperating with this grand jury. What stands out to you just about the way, from at least on the outside, it seems that prosecutors have been going about this?
Yeah, think about that case. If I recall correctly, here's someone who refused to testify before the grand jury, and the DA's office went out of state to get an arrest warrant to bring him back to California. I mean, that's how seriously they're taking this case, if I recall correctly. So this isn't any other case. This isn't any other runaway. This isn't any other young girl who is the victim of violence. I mean, this case has been treated differently, as it should. Look, I wish LAPD had unlimited resources and time to go after all these cases, all these young girls. Their lives matter. And it's sad that this is unfortunately a tale that's all too common. Obviously, we don't know what happened here. We don't know if it was an accident. She was murdered intentionally. She overdosed. She was trafficked. I mean, there's all sorts of speculation out there. I don't know exactly what happened. But what we do know is this is a young girl that was missing for quite some time. She had run away at least once before, and it took a very long time to find her. So I think during that time period, there's going to be a lot of evidence. Obviously, we've seen some of the video evidence the last time she was seen. Again, I expect there to be a lot of digital evidence. It's going to be a strong case, I think, when it's all said and done.
And when it comes to just kind of how the mechanics of the whole situation works out. So if he's arrested tonight, he's being held without bond. He hasn't specifically been charged with anything. And then you have, on Monday, it's going to go in front of the DA. Like, how are you able to hold him for that long a period of time, even through the weekend potentially?
So yeah, these Thursday arrests oftentimes end up with a Monday arraignment because of the time period. Typically, you have about 48 hours to be brought before a judge, but it ends up being the next court day. So that's why the initial appearance will likely be on Monday, where David will be arraigned on the charges. Those charges will be read aloud in court. Expect his lawyer. I think he already has a lawyer based on some of the statements that were made last year. Expect his lawyer to enter a not guilty plea, and then the process starts. Again, if it's a grand jury indictment, which is not typical, there won't be a preliminary hearing. But usually here in LA, the district attorney proceeds by a complaint and a preliminary hearing. And again, just because there's a grand jury, I believe it's just an investigative grand jury. They'd have to convene another grand jury to indict. And I don't think that's what they're going to do. Typically what they do is, in LA, they charge on a complaint. Then after some period of time, there has to be a preliminary hearing. And at that preliminary hearing, the judge determines whether there's enough probable cause to move forward to a full-blown jury trial. So the DA will present some limited evidence, usually through a handful of law enforcement witnesses, and this process is going to get started.
And that was kind of my next question, because we don't know specifically the cause of death. At this point, we know the state at which her body was found, sadly, but then we also don't know what the charges specifically he's going to face. How much may we learn, knowing how much in LA and in California when it comes to, I think of a state like Florida, and you can find the probable cause document online. How much might we learn on Monday if that's when he's arraigned on something?
Well, I think we're going to learn a lot. Obviously, the nature of the charges. So you have first-degree intentional murder, you have special circumstances, you have second-degree murder, you have manslaughter if it's an accident. Obviously, there might be charges related to moving the body. Are there going to be potential sex charges? I mean, I think that would be obviously very important. I mean, again, we're just guessing right now.
Sure.
There's no death penalty here in California. There's been a moratorium. We haven't had an execution in 20 years. So don't expect to see the death penalty regardless of what the charges are. But again, first degree intentional premeditated murder, special circumstances, if there's any type of enhancements, that's all going to be very telling. And look, it's just a matter of days before this evidence comes out.
And when you think about moving past Monday, and again, this has been a case that has developed, it feels like very slowly, and very much under wraps outside of the reporting that we've seen. Like after Monday, depending on what the charges are, like what does the timeline potentially look like for a prosecution of David?
Well, it's going to move quickly. And obviously, it's David's right to a speedy trial. And typically, what you see is the defense waives their right. They want to get the discovery, they want to get all the evidence. So, what is typical is the defendant will waive time. That means they'll review the discovery and they'll see how they can challenge this case. Now, if you're looking at murders, and again, I'm assuming this is a murder case because he's being held without bond. I mean, typically, you have three types of defenses. One, it wasn't me, right? So you got finger pointing, it was an accident, or I didn't intend to do it, right? So something happened that was something less than murder, or some sort of self-defense. Now, obviously, Celeste Rivas, by all accounts, is a pretty small young girl. I would be surprised if there's a self-defense argument, just like Nick Reiner, right? Surprised if you see self-defense in that type of case. His parents are a lot older, they're in their bedrooms. But typically, if you're seeing like what is the defense going to argue, they either argue identity, they argue intent, wasn't premeditated, it was an accident, something along those lines. It was manslaughter, heat of passion, legal insanity. You start attacking intent, or you start putting up some legal defense like self-defense. But again, I would be very surprised if it were self-defense in this case.
And I know we were talking about Neil Langston just a short time ago, but you think about witnesses in this case and who may have already talked to law enforcement, what type of information that law enforcement may have. We don't know what those conversations were like, but what are those conversations typically like in a general sense as a prosecutor when you have someone who might.
Listen. The nigga, David is guilty. All right. Burn. He's guilty, said it will. As long as arrest him, he has been arrested and sweat to immediately. Not for sure. They wait so long to arrest him, not for sure. That's for sure. Neptune and Goon, he's a booty bandit.
Might be a friend of David, might be a friend of someone who's now going to face some pretty serious charges about getting that person in line with what you want as a prosecutor.
Well, Chris, I sort of cut my teeth on drug trafficking cases, and when you're dealing with any criminal organization, and I'm not saying David's entourage is a criminal organization, but what you want to do is you want to lean on the less culpable people in the organization. Maybe someone was, for instance, giving Celeste Rivas drugs, maybe someone wasn't involved in the murder, but they had access to the Tesla. It seems like a lot of people did. What you want to do is lean on them and make sure they flip against the most culpable person in the organization. It's really prosecution 101. And what makes some of these charges strong, let's say you have a conspiracy charge, conspiracy to commit murder. You can really have nothing to do with actual murder, but if you're engaged in overt acts and furtherance of the conspiracy, and let's say it's some larger conspiracy, let's say it's a trafficking conspiracy, well, the next thing you know, you could be substantively on the hook for Celeste Rivas's death, even if you didn't actually kill her. Yeah. So there's a lot of potential time that other individuals may be facing as co-conspirators, accessories, if they're aiding and abetting. And what you want to do is lean on them, make sure to get the information you want, make sure it's truthful, make sure they're going to cooperate. That's what that grand jury is for, testifying before the grand jury. Lock them in, so that way when you move forward against the principal, the person that you think is the most liable, the most culpable, seems like it's David here, that you have those witnesses locked in, because otherwise, guess what? They're going to be the next people to be charged and arrested.
And then just lastly, I mean, I'm sure for whether you're a detective on this case or a prosecutor who's been, kind of watching the evidence come in and you're thinking about what the charges could be, emotionally, what is the moment like tonight, knowing that David is now in custody and you've hit a new level in this investigation in this case?
Yeah, certainly for law enforcement and the prosecution, I think there is going to be this burden lifted because, again, there have been folks like me. I've been very critical of law enforcement. I said, what's going on? This doesn't make any sense to me. Why hasn't an arrest been made? If it's not David, who is responsible for this? So I think there is that relief, but now the real work starts, because now you have a lawyer on the other side, and David has money and he's already lawyered up. At least that's my understanding. That's going to fight this tooth and nail. And because there's no death penalty in California, and because you're not going to give a discount on this case, you're not going to give David, if he really was involved in sort of recruiting or enticing this girl, potentially kidnapping her and killing her, are you going to give him anything less than life? So there's no real deal to be had here. There's no death penalty to take off the table. So this is the type of case that's very likely going to go all the way to jury trial. That's just the reality of it. So, but if you're talking about the people that I've been thinking of, it has to be Celeste Rivas's family. I can't imagine what they've been going through all these years. Your young girl goes missing and then she's found dead, and you really don't have answers. So hopefully the family can finally get some answers for everything.
Did the family ever did a missing person report? Did they even go look for her? It seems like the family care now that she's dead. Crazy. Both said falsified it again. Would you want to Flacco at it again? Tell him, what this is the case, David? You call him Flacco David, bro? You cold. You cold, bro. Smart. Cold.
No, very well put. Former federal prosecutor Nima Rahmani, president of West Coast Trial Lawyers. Big breaking news tonight out of Los Angeles. Thank you, as always, for being with us on Law & Crime.
Of course, Chris. Thanks for having me, as always.
All right, just before we go, I just want to reiterate this news once again and what we know at this point. We know that David has been arrested in connection to the murder, and murder is the word that is being used here by the Los Angeles Police Department in connection to the murder of Celeste Rivas. And this is key, as he's being held without bond right now. We don't know what charges he's going to face, but this case will be presented to the district attorney's office in LA on Monday, and we'll continue to follow this closely. That will do it for this episode of On the Case, presented by Law & Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify, and we're also streaming on Peacock. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.
Peacock.
Major breaking news now. Detectives from the Los Angeles Police Department Robbery Homicide Division have arrested singer David Burke for the murder of Celeste Rivas. Burke is being held without bail. The case will be presented to the DA's office on Monday for filing consideration. You may remember, and we've been reporting, Rivas's body was found in the trunk of David's car in September of last year. She was only 14 years old. Again, this breaking news just into our newsroom. We're working to get more information, and we'll continue to follow this story.
We do want to go ahead and bring in now ABC's Alex Stone on the phone to speak more about this case. Alex, you've been following this from the very beginning. What can you tell us as far as this breaking information goes this afternoon?
Well, Mark and Michelle, sources are telling us that this is based off of evidence that the LAPD was able to gather and put together, and now is going to be presenting to the LA County DA for a filing decision on Monday. This was not from any kind of indictment. We know that the case had gone to a grand jury. It was expected that there might be an indictment coming sometime soon. We were thinking in the last couple of months or in the next few weeks. This was not from that. We are told that this is evidence that they have been compiling going back to when her body was found last September, that now they have reached a point where they believe they have probable cause, and it's gone to the DA.
All right, and so a lot of people wondering, so many things seem to point to him. Why did it take them this long to make the arrest? We know they're pretty methodical about how they do things, but.
Yeah, it's a good question. One of the things that they were waiting on, Mark, was the cause of death, and that there was difficulty reaching that cause of death. Not to get too graphic, but her body was in multiple parts. It was in, we know from court documents, 2 different body bags in the front trunk of that Tesla when her body was found. So it was difficult for the medical examiner to determine the cause of death. So they had to prove or be able to show to the DA that she was murdered, that it wasn't something else where, let's say that she overdosed and then somebody freaked out and put her body in that trunk. They have to be able to prove that it was murder, they now believe that they can do that.
All right.
Yeah, we also know, David, as many entertainers do, had an entourage of people around him at times. I know some other individuals have been considered as drivers of this vehicle or either around. Any information on possibly how this could impact other people that David was around that also may have been around Celeste Rivas?
Michelle, we don't know yet, and if there are any other arrests that are going to be coming in this case. We know that there were a number of witnesses who came and testified in front of the grand jury, again, that this was not an indictment, that this is probable cause that the LAPD put together and moved forward on. But during the grand jury proceedings, which are secret as they're ongoing, that there were a number of other people who came forward, those who are close to David, friends of David, family members of his were subpoenaed to go in front of the grand jury. So if there are other arrests that could be coming, we don't know. But as of right now, he is the only one that we know of under arrest.
All right. Singer David under arrest. Alex Stone, ABC News. Thank you. We have more breaking.
They said, cuz, he ain't getting out. They said the same thing about Young Thug, Melly, all the niggas. Everybody case looking good.
To the Hollywood Hills, where neighbors are talking now about the takedown and the arrest of singer and TikTok star David. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Colleen Williams.
And I'm Michael Brownlee. NBC4 Investigates was first to break the news of David's arrest. He is now being hailed without bail for the murder of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez. The teenager's body was found inside of David's impounded Tesla. That was back in September. He was reportedly on tour at the time. NBC4's Alex Crazier joins us live with new video and reaction now from neighbors. Alex.
Michael and Colleen, this is normally a very quiet road here in the Hollywood Hills, but about 24 hours ago, it became a police scene as the LAPD arrested the singer David outside this home. He's an internationally known singer who rose to fame with hits like Romantic Homicide. In the back of my mind. Now David is in jail on suspicion of murder. LAPD arresting the singer, whose full name is David Burke, yesterday in the Hollywood Hills.
It felt like 100 police officers, a canine unit. I heard someone on the megaphone saying, "Surrender, surrender, come out."
The arrest comes 7 months after 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez was found dead in the trunk of his Tesla in a Hollywood tow yard. I spoke about the arrest with legal analyst Royal Oakes. What's your reaction?
It's a huge question about why it took authorities 7 months to arrest this man. The DNA evidence probably was gone because there was so much deterioration of the body. Plus, the authorities wanted to talk to lots of witnesses. That probably explains the gap. The fact that they have made the arrest now suggests the authorities think they have a very strong case.
Around the time of the singer's arrest, NBC4 shot exclusive video of David's attorney, Blair Burke, leaving her office. Then today, NBC4 Investigates obtained surveillance video that appears to show the defense attorney near the police scene minutes later. This afternoon, Blair Burke returned to the home where police arrested the singer and made no comments as she left.
The DA?
But Blair and the rest of David's legal team released a statement saying, quote, "Let us be clear, the actual evidence in this case will show that David Burke did not murder Celeste Rivas Hernandez, and he was not the cause of her death. There has been no indictment returned by any grand jury in this case and no criminal complaint filed. David has only been detained under suspicion. We will vigorously defend David's innocence."
We assumed he'd fled far away.
After the singer's arrest, neighbors in the Hollywood Hills were surprised to learn David was living nearby.
We never saw anyone like him. We never saw anyone going in or out of his house. We actually assumed no one was living there.
All of our neighbors were kind of on a group chat, and we were like, this was kind of scary that we've been living around the corner from an accused murderer.
One neighbor actually told me that he's relieved that there was an arrest because he said that there have often been parties at this home. I asked if he's heard parties here recently. He said it's an ongoing problem. Either way, on Monday, we're expected to get our first look at David as he's expected in court in person in downtown Los Angeles. Reporting live, I'm Alex Rozier, NBC4 News.
Alex, thank you for that. Stay with NBC4 for continuing coverage of the arrest of the singer David, and we will have live coverage on Monday of his arraignment.
Yeah, man. What y'all think about this David shit, man? I kind of confused about the shit. I always trying to figure like what type of evidence they got on this man. You know what I'm saying? The shit they saying, it don't make no sense. Like, it's cool. I'm wrong. It's cool. It's saying like little shit here and there. Yeah, YouTube shut down to word Slim, man. Logo from the tank on the top tap here. Shout out to that here, bro. I'm about to shut it down, bro. YouTube been acting weird. I'm gonna shut this live channel down for a couple of days. It's like my live channel ain't doing nothing, so I ain't got time to be playing with it. But it's the first time to try to like, comment, subscribe. David jumping out this thing.